Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you my top 64 ranked prospects for the upcoming 2025 NHL draft. This has been a video I've been working on for a little bit here. It's kind of been tough. The number of prospects I've been ranking has kept going up as I get deeper and deeper into this class. Originally I was going to do a top 32, but too many guys left off the list, so top 50 was a nice round number. Then a couple other honorable mentions I wanted to bring up, so I went up and ended on a top 64, which is what we have today. I'll be going more in-depth on the top 32 guys than giving you the rundown of the next 32 in more of a brief list-like style here. Heading into the draft, I'll have a couple more videos out for draft content in the coming weeks, so be sure to subscribe to see more of those as we head into draft season and the NHL offseason as a whole. But for right now, let's jump right into this top 64 rankings. Starting us off at number 1, no real surprise, it's Matthew Schaefer. I think he's at this point just a consensus number 1, and I've been on the Matthew Schaefer number 1 train for quite a while here. I think he's just a super stud. He's just a stud defenseman. He's exactly what you want out of a number 1 guy. He plays a really good, strong two-way game. He's always excelled in his defensive end. He's super smart in his own end, and then you take the development he had in the short time he played this year offensively, and the way he skates, the way he moves the puck, the way he sees the ice in the O-zone. He's just an all-around perfect defenseman. You can put him on your PK, you can put him on your top power play unit. He can eat 25 minutes a night. There's not much more you can ask for. Plus, he's also a stand-up character guy who, it could be the future captain of the team who drafts him. I think he's got that kind of character with him. He's been a great piece for a lot of different teams and has really succeeded at every level he's played at in his career. At number 2, it's another one that's pretty consensus at this point. It's Michael Misa, an amazing big breakout season for him. He had the exceptional status back going into the OHL, and he was one of the not newer exceptional status, but one of the latest exceptional status kids. And now, we're seeing a lot more these days, but Misa didn't quite have the start to his OHL career you would have expected or hoped for, but he's finally lived up to the exceptional status level this past season with 62 goals this season for Saginaw. Not great in the playoffs, didn't have an ideal playoff. Saginaw kind of had an unfortunate exit. He had a decent playoff run last year, though, as he went to the Memorial Cup. He had 16 points in 22 games on that run. But he's been a really good player, and he's going to continue to be a really good player. There's rumors on where he'll play next year. We'll see whether it's the NCAA, back in Saginaw, or just at the NHL level. But, there's not much Michael Misa hasn't accomplished. He's a super talented player, really good skater, does pretty much everything well. There's not a thing he just specializes in. He's not a pure just sniper who just has an elite shot, or a pure playmaker who's just that's what his goal is. He does all of it. He's a great playmaker. He's a great shooter. He has great offensive zone awareness. He really can do anything you ask him to, when he made the full-time transition to center this year, showing that he can also play a decent two-way game as well. So Michael Misa is a perfect first-line center for the future. Odds are in San Jose, though, where he likely gets drafted, he'll be a second-line center, but he's got the skill set to be a number 1 guy. At number 3, I'm going to be sticking with James Higgins. Not the season you would have hoped for if you're James Higgins, not quite the season people were expecting out of him. It was a really close debate, but I'd say heading into the year, most people probably had Higgins at 1. But I think, to me, he didn't have an amazing year by any stretch, but nobody else below him, to me, had a good enough year to surpass him besides Misa and Schaefer. So I'm sticking with Higgins at 3. I think he's a really talented player, super gifted offensively, has elite skills with the puck, really amazing playmaker. I don't know if he'll stick at center full time. It depends on where he gets drafted, what they want to do with him, because he is a little bit undersized, but he plays a hard, good game. He's not afraid to get physical and get in the dirty areas, and he's also got good goal-scoring touch, too, on top of his elite playmaking skills. He showed that off at the World Juniors, playing as an underager on that top line with Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault, and he showed he's got some scoring touch, too. He can put up his fair share of pucks in the back of the net. But his real calling card is his passing and his playmaking skill and his vision. It's going to make him a top-end player in the league, but I think James Higgins is a stud. And, I think you get to this 3 to 6, 3 to 7 range, and you could probably order them in any real order, and it wouldn't be that crazy. If you had a few different guys here at number 3, I wouldn't call you crazy by any stretch. One of those guys is at number 4, Porter Martone. Another guy didn't quite have maybe the year people were expecting. He's gonna be a really interesting draft prospect to watch. He fits the mold that the team seem to be looking for in terms of he's a big physical, not exactly a super physical big guy, but he's a big, good size. He can play physical forward, but he's not a centerman, and it feels like that's going to make him drop a little bit, as it feels the players who are rising up the boards are the big centermen, the Caleb Desnoyers, the Anton Freundel, Brady Martin, those types rising up boards. Martone might start to slip, and I don't think he should. I think he's an absolutely amazing player. I think you can get the physicality out of him. You can bring the true power forward out of him at the NHL level, because he has all the other tools, the harder tools to gain for a player of his size, the hands, the shot, the passing, all the offensive tools. He has all of that already. Getting the physical side is easy. He's already got the size to do it. It's just about getting him into that mindset. But he's played so well and has been excellent wherever he's played. He's also been the Canadian brass for all the Team Canada groups have loved Porter Martone. He's played for all their national teams, had an amazing U18s last year. This year he ended up being named to the World Championship team and playing 2 games for them, and didn't look out of place. He didn't score any points, but watching those games, he didn't look out of place. He looked fine. He looked like he belonged among those players. He wasn't lighting up the score sheet, but he was fit in. He played a role and he played it pretty well. So I think there's a lot to like in a guy like Porter Martone. And when with the not resurgence, but the growth and the desire for GMs to get these big, strong top 6 forwards with skill, Porter Martone is the epitome of that in one. He's got the skill and the size. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. At number 5, I've got Anton Freundel, the top Swedish player, top European player. He had it was an up and down year for Freundel, dealt with a little bit of injuries at the early part of the year and came on really strong at the late parts. He has some inconsistencies to his drive and his play at times, but when he's playing at his best, there's not many players in this draft class that can match him. He's got elite goal-scoring touch and is a really strong skater, a really strong physical guy. He's got good size, too, that you would want in a player. I think he's going to be an absolutely great piece. And, people are talking about him as if he's probably the most NHL-ready prospect, potentially, in this draft class, because he's been playing at the professional level in Hockeyallsvenskan for Djurgårdens, and they've had a really good team. He's played well. He's been one of their top players, and I think it's not crazy to say he could be playing in the NHL next year if that's what he wants and that's what the team who drafts him wants. But I think he could do it. But yeah, a really good player, and he's got underrated playmaking ability too. Anton Freundel is going to be another great piece. This top end of this draft class, I think, is really slept on. I think Freundel is a great guy. At number 6, it's a bit of a surprising ranking, potentially, if you're not on the same train as I am, but it's Victor Eklund. I am super, super high on Victor Eklund. I really just love the way he plays. He's only 5'11". He's a little undersized in the weight category as well, but it hasn't stopped him from playing his physical, hard-nosed style of hockey. Gets in the corners, wins puck battles constantly. There's not many players who can beat him in a puck battle. He's been playing in the same places as Anton Freundel and has fit in almost better and more consistently than Freundel has, in terms of he doesn't have as many lapses in his game, doesn't go through these cold streaks, because despite having really good skills with the puck and making great passes and great vision and having a decent scoring touch, when he's not scoring, when he's not creating, he still does so much for you off the puck and in the corners and battling for loose pucks and winning you those 50-50s. He plays such a hard-nosed style. I love Victor Eklund's game. I think he's going to be such a great player, and it's going to translate so well to the NHL level. Yes, the size is a concern, and I'm sure that's why he's going to end up slipping a lot further than this in the actual draft. But to me, the way he plays and the fact that he does all that with great skill, it's just too hard to pass up on. He was an amazing player for Sweden at the World Juniors this past year, getting the nod, and was just an absolute stud. He was one of the younger players on the ice, and you couldn't tell. He's one of the smaller players on the ice, and you couldn't tell by the way he plays. He's absolutely amazing. Probably my favorite prospect in this draft as a whole. At number 7 is Caleb Desnoyers. He has had a really good end of the season, an amazing end of the season, in fact. I didn't move him up. I don't think I really moved him at all. I had him at 7 here to begin with. I'm in love with Eklund, so I didn't move up Desnoyers much more, but he did raise, to me, I wasn't considering him as a part of this tier I had above with the Freundels and the Martones, but now he's on that level, and I think you move him up and down in that 3 to 7 range, and I'm not it's not crazy to me. He had an amazing end of the year, like I said, and he was playing. It seemed like he was playing most of the year with like not broken wrists, but injured wrists, and it kind of hindered him in the Memorial Cup when he was playing against the top end teams who were really trying to shut him down. That was their main goal, and it ended up working out for them. He didn't have a really great Memorial Cup tournament, but as a whole in the playoffs, he was absolutely amazing. He was probably the best, maybe the second best player in all of the CHL during the playoffs. He was putting the pucks in the back of the net like crazy. He was really dominating whenever he was on the ice and was the leading force on Moncton's elite offense. But he's an absolute stud. He plays a really strong two-way game too. Really good defensively, really smart player. Always knows where to be, always in the right spot, and is able to create a lot of chances and stop a lot of chances because of that. And to think he was doing all these things while playing with injured wrists, which, you ever play hockey, you got to use your wrist for a lot of different things. Stick handling, passing, shooting, all of that is affected by the health of your arms in general, but your wrists especially. So to do all that despite being injured, really impressive. So I would have loved to see what he would have done if he was fully healthy during this run. But I think he's an absolutely amazing player, and the one word around him is he's a winner. He's won at every level: U18, U17, Hlinka Gretzky tournament gold, QMJHL champion, and he was the playoff MVP. He wins everywhere he goes, and I'm hoping or assuming it'll probably be similar at the NHL level with the skill he has. At number 8, we kind of dropped down a tier in my eyes among the players, and and we started off with Roger McQueen. An interesting, polarizing prospect. 6'5", over 200 pounds, really solid frame, really strong player, but he's got the back issues. It was a little bit clarified at the combine the past week that it was just a one-time fracture and it wasn't going to be a lingering thing, similar to what Caden Lindstrom has. But that was similar to what was said about Caden Lindstrom around the same time, and it ended up being a lingering thing. The benefit McQueen has going for him is he did come back and played at the end of last year and played decently well. 20 points in 17 games. He had a pretty good end of the season and was okay in the playoffs. Nothing crazy, but Brandon didn't have a great playoff run or a long playoff run in general. But I think he's still a really solid player, and he's still, if he's healthy, if he's playing at a full health, I think he's arguably better than most guys on this list. I could see you having him a fully healthy Roger McQueen in the top 5, and that wouldn't be crazy, but who knows if he'll get there, if he's going to get back to that health. But in terms of just the pure skill set, he's an elite 6'5" power forward with gross hands, really, really nice hands, a great scoring touch, really good shooting, really good passing, really good playmaking as a whole. Just super good all around the ozone. Just will he be healthy? What will that health entail? Will it hinder him? But if not, you're looking at like a Tage Thompson type. Maybe doesn't have the shot Tage Thompson has, but he's got the size, plays the same style, and I think he could end up being a really solid player who could be a first liner in the future if he hits his potential, which is sky high. At number 9, Jake O'Brien, a interesting player who's risen a lot down the stretch here as well. The big thing with O'Brien is he might be the best pure playmaker in this class, maybe second only to James Haggins. Just really elite vision, one of the best, some of the best vision in all of the past draft classes. What scouts are saying about him: really good passing, good head on his shoulders. He needs to bulk up, but he has the room on his frame to do so at his height and stature. And he'll get to that level as he, continues developing against on those NHL teams programs to bulk up. But he's a really, really good passing player who's going to be a great playmaker, and he plays a decent two-way game as well. He fits in the center role pretty well, and has had a really good OHL career for the most part. He won OHL Rookie of the Year his first year, and took a big step up this year and added 34 points to his total from his rookie season, and had a really good point per game playoff run while playing for Canada. Hlinka Gretzky, he didn't end up putting any numbers up, but I imagine he'll get some more run on certain Canadian teams, like the junior teams, over the next 2 years as he continues his development. But a really, really solid playmaking forward who's going to be a stud. And I think, if I had to predict it, I think he goes higher than McQueen and Eklund in the actual draft based on the consensus around these kinds of players. But for me, I stick with him at 9. You're going to end up with a great top 6 playmaking forward if you get Jake O'Brien on your roster. Rounding out the top 10, we get to Radim Murtka. To me, no question, he's the second best defenseman in this class. Just a really strong, 6'6" defenseman. I think his floor is a bottom pair guy who can play really good shutdown minutes, but his ceiling is a top pair guy who plays 25 minutes a night and does a lot of things for you at both ends of the ice. Murtka is obviously elite defensively, throws the body around and can lay some good hits, but also has surprisingly good offensive skills for a guy of his size. Moves the puck well, skates well at the blue line, walks the line well, and really is a smart player in the O zone. And he made the transition over from the bigger ice surface over in Europe to the smaller surface in North America, playing for Seattle this past year. And it didn't slow him down at all. He didn't really take much time to adapt. He was very quick to adapt to it, and it worked to his skill set really well with his smooth skating and being able to use his size on that smaller surface. He was able to make a big impact for Seattle all year, and has been a top piece for the Czechian junior teams over the past couple seasons. So I think Murtka is going to be an absolute stud, and he's going to be a really solid defenseman. It also helps that he's a right shot, and that's something that's very coveted among NHL GMs. They're a lot more rare these days. You get a 6'6" right shot defenseman who can, work the blue line well in both ends of the ice. You got yourself a really highly touted player. At 11, we get to Jackson Smith. To me, like almost another teardrop heading into the 11 down. Jackson Smith is a really good defensive defenseman who can play really well on his own end, but this year he really showed off more of an offensive tool bag. Especially at the end of the year, he kind of went on a crazy run where he finally started putting pucks in the back of the net really, really well, and moved the puck well. He got some good assists, got some good play all over for Tri-City, and has kind of played all over for Team Canada and has won all over for Team Canada as well. Has been one of the top defensemen there. One of the one of the knocks on him has been kind of his mental game. Sometimes he makes some decisions that are a little questionable, but I think that'll just get honed in as he continues his development. I don't think that's a major issue to me. He's got the skills, he's got the size, he's got, he works well at both ends. I think overall he'll end up being a really solid top 4 defenseman for whoever ends up drafting him at the NHL level. At number 12, Carter Bayer. I think a guy we'd be easily considering a top 10 prospect with the likes of Roger McQueen and Jake O'Brien here, if he didn't tear his Achilles at the end of the season. But the positive thing for Carter Bayer, similar to Roger McQueen, he's already back out on the ice. It seems like it was only a partial tear, and he seems to be on the ice and doing well, because Carter Bayer was on an absolute tear during the first half of the season. He was arguably having the best season of any draft prospect in terms of just production at the level he's playing at. He was playing unreal for Everett, and it really hindered Everett's playoff hopes and run with him going down, and his own draft stock by him tearing his Achilles. But he's such a talented player. Despite only playing 56 games and getting hurt, I think it was January or February, ended up still being a second team All-Star in the WHL. But 82 points in 56 games, just a really all-around great player. Plays well in his own end, smart, gets into the corners and makes good physical plays, despite, again, another undersized player who plays really, really strong and plays a physical game, and also is really smart in the offensive end, is able to create a lot of chances with his hockey IQ in the O zone to set up his teammates and to create chances for himself in the offensive zone. And when he has those chances, he typically finishes them because he's got a really solid finishing touch to him. At number 13, we have Brady Martin, the biggest riser over the past couple weeks after the Combine and the end of the season he had. I think 13 is a reasonable ranking for him. I'm not sold on the idea of him as a top 10 pick. He's really good at what people are raving about him. They're raving about the right things. He's a great physical, strong body checker. He lays the body. He was interviewed at the Combine, and he was asked who he models his game after, and he said Matthew Knies, Tom Wilson, and Sam Bennett. And the amount of GM's ears that perked up when they heard those 3 names, it was all the GMs, really. They all are going to be all over this guy because he plays the way they want. He's going to be a physical menace. He just runs people over, and isn't just hitting for the sake of hitting. He does it well and is technically sound at it. He's not just throwing his body weight around. He actually has really good technique to his hitting, and he has good skill. He has a really good shot. His shot is deceptively good, but beyond that, I question some of his offensive capabilities and what the ceiling could be for him offensively. But I do think there is some good potential here, and he is going to be a really good second line kind of guy who plays the physical way that you want and also can produce offensively. He just has to develop his offensive game a little further for me to consider him among the elite of the elite in this draft class. So we'll see where he goes. He's got a wide range of where he could fall. I think at this point, though, it's anywhere from 3, 4 to 10. I don't think he falls out of the top 10. So it'll be interesting to see on draft day, but I don't have him as a top 10 guy, but I think that the style he plays is just going to be so highly coveted. At number 14, Keyshawn Aitchison, a real just wild card defenseman who will do anything you want and does it well. He can play good defense, has a really good offensive bag to him, a wicked hard slap shot that's really accurate, and similar to Brady Martin, lays the body. He's a really physical guy who will run you over if you give him the chance to, and he was a big piece for Barrie offensively this past year, with 59 points in 64 games as a defenseman, while also being extremely physical and punishing in his own end. There's a lot to like about Keyshawn Aitchison, and I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be a really high-end second pair defenseman for whoever ends up drafting him. At number 15, Lyndon Lakovic, a guy who I really like. I'm surprised he's not getting talked about more, to be honest. He is the full package of what NHL GMs seem to be raving about this offseason. He's 6'4", he scores really well, he plays a really hard game, he can play anywhere on the ice, he can play wing, he can play center, he can do anything you want out of him, and he does it all really well. And he did it all really well this year in Moose Jaw while having a very weak supporting cast because that team wasn't that good after they traded away a lot of their top pieces and a lot of their top guys left for the NHL or the AHL. So despite all of that, losing the top pieces, not having a lot to rely on around him, he still put up 58 points in 47 games while being a top player and had a contributing role as well on their WHL championship run just a year ago. But the size, the skill, everything he does, he plays with good physicality. I don't understand why he's not being talked about more. I've got him here at 15. I love Lyndon Lakovic, and I think he's going to be a really good player who can play anywhere you want him to. He fills all the roles well, so we'll see where he ends up going on draft day, but I love Lyndon Lakovic's game. At number 16 is Justin Carbonneau, right wing out of Blainville-Boisbrand in the QMJHL. Really talented scorer, just that's what his game is. He's arguably one of the best pure goal scorers in this draft class. Shoots the puck really well and is really smart with it, really works his way into the open eye areas to create scoring chances for himself, and he's got good size so he can play a good physical game too. He was one of the top players in the QMJHL, named the first team All-Star this past year, and was decent for his Q team during their short playoff run. But yeah, the goal scoring is what's to love with Carbonneau. I think if you're looking for a goal scorer, he could go as high as like 10. We'll see where he ends up landing, but it's really just going to be whatever team is looking for just a pure goal scoring winger who has good size, he can be developed physically as well. That's where they're gonna scoop him up, no question, because of the high end goal scoring ability he has. At 17, it's Sasha Boumedienne. I love Sasha Boumedienne's game. I think he's not getting talked about enough in terms of just the skill set he possesses. He was not hindered, but a bit sheltered at BU, and you didn't really get to notice him because he was playing limited minutes behind Willander and Cole Hudson. But he still was solid. He played really well in his defense in his own end, didn't make mistakes, didn't cough up the puck too much, wasn't causing defensive lapses, wasn't creating scoring chances for the other team, and also he could do good things in the O zone. He had 13 points in 40 games, but he didn't get the opportunity in the offensive zone. When they had key O zone draws, it was Willander and it was Hudson. When they had power plays, it was those two. When they had any offensive opportunities, he wasn't really the one on the ice. He wasn't their go-to guy. Next year he will be, will be. Cole Hudson will still be there, but he'll get more opportunity. He'll get those Willander opportunities as Willander goes to the NHL. I think he'll get some really good opportunities there. And he went to Sweden, or went to the Swedish team for the U18s, got the opportunities offensively, and dominated. He broke Cole Hudson's single tournament point record among defensemen with 14 points in 7 games. That's the most all-time in a single tournament by a D-man. That should not be overlooked. He's a little bit undersized, but not too undersized. He's not Cole Hudson undersized. He's got decent size on him. I think he's going to be a really talented player and should be looked at a lot higher among this draft class. At 18, Braden Coots, dog and a bone kind of player, just an elite forechecker who just plays hard hockey. I think the thing we're seeing a lot of this draft is it's not as high end in the skill. I think you get past the 15 range, and a lot of these guys wouldn't be ranked as highly in previous draft classes. The depth in this class isn't as high, but there's so many of these guys who just play with high motors, high intensity, high physicality, and teams really want that sort of thing for their middle six. I think Braden Coots is the epitome of that kind of player. Good forechecker who's really good in his own end as well, plays a good two-way game. He was the captain of a couple Canadian junior teams during his development time here. And yeah, I think he can play second line, but I think he'll be an elite third line center who really drives play well and can create offensively, plays well defensively, and just, forechecks hard, gets the puck out of the corners, and looks for opportunities to create an offensive chance after he can successfully steal the puck, win a 50-50 battle, and do all those good things deep in the offensive zone. So I like Braden Coots' game, and I think he's going to be he's going to fit really well in a lot of different places, a very dynamic player offensively in terms of where he could play. But I'm excited to see what he could do. I think he's a really slept-on guy as well. At number 19, Cole Reshny, who had arguably the best end of the season among any draft prospect. The only one who might come close is Caleb Desnoyers. But besides that, I think the best final 2-3 months of the season, it was Cole Reshny. He's got some really good skill. He's a little smaller, I think he's 5'11", but has super, super good skill, and finally was able to put it on display at the end of the year and really went on an absolutely insane run. Ended up with 92 points in 62 regular season games, had 25 points in 11 playoff games, was just unreal for Victoria, really putting the team on his back at the end of the season. Ended up playing at the U18s as well, had a good tournament there. Reshny, his stock skyrocketed at the end of the season, and I'm buying into the hype. I think he's got so much skill and plays a good game, plays both ends of the ice well, and can be a really well-rounded middle six player for any team who desires him. But yeah, there's a lot of high-end skill to tap into here, and we saw the emergence of it at the end of the year. Maybe you can find out even another level in his development to the offensive skill here, because there's a lot to like with Reshny offensively. And number 20, another offensive dynamo in Ben Kindle. The difference with Kindle is he is undersized. He's a smaller guy, but he's got a lot of skill, a lot of skill. I think if he can translate he's not as physical as a lot of the other undersized guys in this draft class are. So if he can make the jump to the NHL and can play at that extra, add that little bit of physicality to his game, he should be a top end guy. I think he could be a real good top six scoring winger. He puts the puck in the back of the net really well. He passes really well. He's just offensively super, super gifted. It's more a matter of will the size hinder him at the NHL level. I don't know. It really depends on can his skill translate. If he can bring all this skill over to the NHL, if he has enough skill to outweigh the cons of his size, he'll be a great NHL player. It's more that matter of if with him, because he is a smaller player. But like I said, there's a lot of skill. One of the best pure offensive players in this draft class. So a really skilled forward here at number 20 that a lot of teams will be desiring. It's just he also could slip very far because teams might get scared off because of the size concerns. At 21, we get to Cullen Potter, a guy who's widely considered the best skater in the draft class. Really, really fast, smooth skating, good edge work. He does all the things you want out of a pure skater, and just an offensively gifted kind of player. Or not as gifted as like a Ben Kindle or Cole Reshny, but he's just a really smart player, good playmaker, a really good passing. I think he could play center, but I think he'll end up being more of a winger at the NHL level because he's got that really good playmaking, head on his shoulders, and just a really smooth skater. Can carry the puck up the ice really well, and then turn, open his options as he outskates everyone else on the ice, and can create offense like that on fast break opportunities and making good passes in the O zone. Had a good season for ASU as one of the all-rookies in his conference, and had a good U18 tournament as well at the end of the year. So I think there's a lot here with Cullen Potter. Smaller guy as well, but it's really smooth skating, and you can do a lot of damage with that skating ability. At 22, we get to Logan Hensler. Hensler's an interesting guy who kind of slipped down the board over the course of the last year. He's a really good defenseman who's going to be a solid shutdown guy, I think, but the offensive game hasn't really developed for him yet, and that's kind of been not really concerning, but just sort of like why he slipped so far down the board. He was considered one of the top defense prospects heading into this draft, heading into the draft year, and especially like 2 years ago as we were looking ahead to this draft class. But he just hasn't really found that offensive game. However, that could be part of the fact of that could be because Wisconsin was not that good of a program this past year. They didn't have a great team together, so it might have hindered Hensler's production and hindered the things he could do on the ice. But overall, he's going to be a real solid. I think the floor is really high for a guy like Hensler. Similar to a guy like Radim Murtka, odds are he ends up being at worst a third pair guy who can play really good shutdown minutes for you. But I think there is a lot of potential here with Logan Hensler to be a top 4 guy who can create offensively and do all the things you like in the offensive zone. I mean, as an underager, he was named to the American junior team, and he didn't look out of place. He was one of the younger guys on that team, and he fit in well. He played his role well and was really solid. At number 23, we get to Cameron Reed, a more offensively gifted defenseman who really skates well, smooth skater, works the blue line well, and is a really good puck-moving defenseman in the offensive zone. Needs to work on his defensive skills a little bit, but he's got good size. So if he can hone his defensive skills, he's got enough size to play a good defensive game. So yeah, he's a bigger offensive defenseman at just over 6 foot, but I think he's going to be a really solid piece for whoever wants him. I think he's going to be he can be a good power play quarterback, fit in well in the top 4. And like I said, if you can hone on his defensive skills throughout his development, there's a lot to like with Cameron Reed. It's really just honing in defensively to help him improve going forward. At 24, we get to the first goalie on this list. It's Joshua Ravensbergen. He's most scouts' dream goalie in a way. 6'6", really good size, really good movement, flexibility, sees well through traffic and controls pucks in tight well. He's had some good years in the WHL for Prince George, has been one of the top goalies in all of the WHL. Back-to-back second-team All-Stars in the WHL. So there's a lot to like with Josh Ravensbergen, and I think he's going to be a really solid goalie who's got a really high ceiling with that size. If he continues to develop it, the ceiling is really, really high for Ravensbergen. I think he's really no question the best goalie in the class, and that's coming from a guy who really likes some of the goalies down the board here. I think Ravensbergen, though, is still just far and away the best prospect. Maybe right now, in terms of just if you put them on the ice today, some of those other goalies might have him beat, but the potential Ravensbergen possesses at his size, while already being comparable to those guys right now, it's sky high for Ravensbergen, and I think I would say he's a first round lock. There's a few teams that need a goalie in their prospect pool. You shouldn't be passing on a guy like Ravensbergen. I think he needs to go in the first round here. At number 25, Milton Gastrin, 6'3" Swedish center. So he's a really physical Swedish center, which isn't a typical thing for the Swedes, but he plays a perfect two-way physical game for a centerman. He's your kind of prototypical second line, third line center who's got a good offensive bag. He had a really good season at the J20 level over in Sweden. Played a little bit in the SHL, but ended up putting up many points. But also wasn't bad in any way. Like, he fit in well, but it was just a better development for him to have him at the U20 level. Had some good tournaments for Sweden at the Hlinka Gretzky, and the U18s has been a good piece for them at all their international levels. But yeah, he's a really just prototypical middle six center. Plays good size, plays physical, plays hard, gets dirty, gets in the corners, creates offense, back checks hard, forechecks hard, does everything you want. Little bit, he doesn't have quite the, he's not a pure dangler, elite speed or any of that sort of stuff, but he's just a really smart two-way player who's going to be a really solid two-way center for a team in this upcoming year. Next up is Blake Fiddler, a guy who has a really weird developmental path, one of the weirdest ones I've seen as an American defenseman playing in the WHL. He played in the WHL last year, started the year in the WHL this year, went over to the USNDDP for a few games, and played for USA, obviously, at the U18s of the Hlinka Gretzky, because he is an American, but he also has Canadian citizenship, I believe, so he can play almost for both. He played for Canada at the U17s before going over this year and playing for the American team, so a really interesting development path for him. Not something I've seen in a prospect, I think, ever, really. but 6'4" defensive shutdown defenseman who's got decent offensive skills. Nothing too crazy, nothing to call home about. But he's got really good defensive skills, and at his size, he's going to be a really solid second pair physical shutdown defenseman at the NHL level if he hits his potential. But yeah, that's really the thing with Fiddler, and I think he's going to go decently high because a 6'4" defenseman is pretty highly coveted. At 27, we get to Malcolm Spence, another guy. You get to this part of the draft with the way this class is. A lot of these guys that the ceilings aren't sky high, but they're just going to be really high floor guys, and that's what Malcolm Spence is. Middle six, hard-nosed winger who plays a good two-way game, similar to a lot of these other guys. His offensive bag has been a little limited lately. He didn't quite hit the offensive potential that he was expected to after being the second overall pick in the OHL. He never really reached that spot and didn't really take the big developmental strides offensively people were hoping. But he plays really hard. He's always 110% on the ice and is, good size, good physicality, good defensive game, really just well-rounded game as a whole. Just doesn't excel at anything in particular. So that's really the only knock on Spence is there's not an area of the game that he is just elite at. He's just good at everything, and that's why he's a super high floor, low ceiling kind of guy, I think, in this draft class. At 28, we go to the almost complete opposite, a super high ceiling, low floor guy in Cameron Schmidt. He's one of the smallest players in this draft class. He's just over 5'7", but he has really good goal scoring. He's a really good shooter who's got a really good goal scoring touch. But at this size, I question if he has enough pure skill to get by at the NHL level. Will this skill be enough to make up for the lack of size? With a guy like Ben Kindle, I think it will. With Cameron Schmidt, I'm just not so sure that the skill he has will be enough to surpass the limitations due to his size. He's very, very small, but for what he's been able to do at the levels he's played at, it's been really good. He's played really well and has been an elite scoring threat for whoever he's played with. We'll see if he can continue to develop that, and maybe he can add a few. He's still young, so maybe he can add an inch to his height. Maybe he can add a little bit, bulk up a little bit to his actual frame, but there's not a lot of room for that at that size, so we'll see how it develops. But I think he's going to have to be a really elite scoring threat to be able to make an NHL impact because he can't play bottom six at that size. He has to be a top six guy. He just needs to make sure he has the skill to do it at the NHL level. At 29, William Moore, a perfect, two-way center here. Another one of these guys, very similar to Milton Gashrin, similar size, similar play style, can put up good point production as a good offensive bag, had a really good U18 tournament with one of the top players for the USA at that tournament, and had a really good U17 tournament the year before, was one of the top players at that tournament, leading the tournament in points. So he's got the offensive bag to be a top-end guy, and plays a really, really solid two-way game. He's a really solid defensive center. So I think he's just going to be, perfect second-line, third-line center with that two-way game, and has a lot more offensive bag than you'd expect out of a guy like that with how he's played at the USNTDP these past few years. At 30, we get to another polarizing prospect in this draft. That's Ivan Ryabkin, and I have him here at 30 in terms of pure rankings. When I've got two more mocks coming out before the draft, I don't think I'll have him in the first round of either of those mocks. From everything it seems the reporting is on him and on what scouts are saying about him is there's a lot of skill there, but people don't want to take the chance on, there's personality concerns, there's effort concerns, drive, motivation, all those sorts of things are piling up for him because he doesn't, when he's on his game, when he's playing well and he wants to play hard, he's super skilled, a lot of skill. He's probably more skilled than a lot of the guys I have here ranked above him. But that skill is so few and far between these days with the way he plays that you question whether he'll care enough to do it at the NHL level. And that's the thing scouts are scared of. They're afraid of the fact that he might not care enough to put in the effort at the NHL level. And that's the biggest knock and flaw with Ivan Ryabkin's game. Super skilled guy, won MHL Rookie of the Year, but then had a falling out with his MHL club and ended up leaving to go play at the USHL. Was really good for them as they went on to win the USHL championship in Muskegon, but the question marks still lie in whether he'll care enough to get the job done at the NHL level, because you can't half-ass it as an NHL player. You have to be giving your full effort at all times, or you're not going to make it in that league. So we'll see if Ryabkin can hit that mark, but it's going to be tough for him, and I think he's going to end up slipping pretty far on draft day. At 31, Henry Brustevich, a really good offensive defenseman, similar to his brother Hunter, who's in the Calgary Flame system now. Really good, smart offensive defenseman. Didn't get quite the offensive workload that you would have maybe hoped for because he was playing in London. He was similar to Sacha Boumediene in the way he was buried behind Bonk and Dickinson. Offensively, didn't get a lot of those opportunities, but when he was given the opportunity, he didn't waste it. He made good on his opportunities and was a really good offensive defenseman who was able to capitalize on a lot of chances. Next year, he'll go back to London, and he might have committed. He might end up committing to a NCAA team. He's got the skill to do that, and I'm sure he'll be coveted by those teams. But if he goes back to London, he'll get full number one defenseman opportunities, as both those guys will go to the NHL, and I'll be curious to see how that develops. But right shot offensive defenseman, I think this is a player who could go a little bit higher than expected just because of how coveted right shot defensemen are, and he's got a really good offensive bag. And then rounding out the top 32, we get to Jack Nesbitt, a big physical, over 6'4" centerman. Doesn't quite have an elite offensive bag, but teams are in love with the size, and he plays a really strong game. He's a good skater for his size as well. So we'll see how it all pans out for Nesbitt. I like him. I think he's solid. I think a lower ceiling. I'm not too sold on his offensive upside, but I think he's got enough size and physicality to be a top-end player at the NHL level. And now throwing up here, this is the next 32, the rounding out the top 64 with this list here. Just going through some of the guys on this list, Jacob Wozniak, I think is super skilled, super high skill kind of guy, really talented player who's got a great offensive bag and he's got good size. We'll see if he can continue to develop that. Jack Murtaugh, another good offensive piece. Bill Zonin's a real highly coveted guy, got good size on him, and has been a really top-end scorer in the QMJHL over the past few years, and skates well and plays hard. So he's ranked. A lot of people have him ranked in the top 32, and that's not crazy at all. I think, as I've said at a few different levels in this list, I think once you get to around 25 or maybe even 23 on my list, you can go down to about almost 50, and you could swap these guys in any which way, and it's not crazy at all. This is a really tightly coveted draft class because there's not that level of top-end talent. So a lot of these guys are really interchangeable, and it means there's going to be a lot of craziness on draft night. At the end of that first round, there's going to be a lot of players you don't expect to go in the end of that first round because nobody is super, elite at that level. There's not guys that people are like, oh, you got to take this guy in the first round in this range. But yeah, Bill Zonin is really solid. I love Cole McKinney's game. Really good two-way centerman who plays a good defensive game and has really good offensive upside as well. Jack Ivankovich, I got to talk about. I love him. I think he's only 6 foot, and that's a definite concern for goalies. But he has all the skill sets of a good goalie needs. He's super fast in his crease, moves really well, really efficient with his movements, no wasted strides, no wasted space. He's not sliding in places. He's not opening himself up by oversliding and having to scramble back. He's very calm and controlled in his net. Great flexibility, great athleticism as a goalie. He has everything you want as a goalie prospect, except he's only 6 foot. But to me, I think he's going to be a great NHL starter. That's where I'm at with Ivankovich. I'm not worried about the size. He's going to be a stud. I love his game. And, Team Canada has been really high on him as well. He's been the goalie they've picked for pretty much every tournament, despite Ravensburger being Canadian. Ivankovich has been the guy they go with. The U18s, the U17s. He's been their guy, and he has not failed them yet. He has been absolutely amazing. He's going over to Michigan the next year. But, he played for the junior team. He was amazing in the game he played. They ended up losing the game, but he was not any fault of his. It was the game against Latvia. He played really well in that game. He had a really good shootout performance as well. For the U18s this past year, he played 6 games, had a .961 save rating for the 1.05 goals against average. And for the one of the U17 squads, he had a .923 save percentage and a 2.51 goals against average in 8 games played. Ivankovich is an absolute stud. I think people shouldn't overlook him because of his height. He has been a top player for all the U18 teams he's played on. He's won Helena Gretzky gold. He's won U18 gold. He's won U17 gold. He's won U18 gold twice. He wins, and he's an absolute stud while he does it. Moving along though, Eric Nielsen, a really good skilled centerman out of Sweden. Will Horkoff is an interesting prospect. He's had a limited sample size this year at Michigan because he bounced around a little bit and came on late. But in that small sample size, he played pretty well with 10 points in 18 games. I'll be really interested to watch how he develops next year with a full season in the NCAA. But he's got, he's 6'4", so he's got really good size and has obviously some good skill and fit in well. So we'll see how that continues to develop. Charlie Trethewey is a good, solid right shot defenseman. Victor Klingsell is another skilled Swedish forward. Nathan Bem has got a lot of upside. LJ Mooney had a really good U18 tournament. He's only 5'7" though, so we'll see how that, he's another smaller guy. There's a lot of smaller guys in this class, but LJ Mooney's got a ton of skill. We'll see if he can develop it. Similar to Luca Romano. Luca Romano's a smaller guy, good skill, good upside there. Banak had a good season. Kerman Limitov is a guy who, now we're getting into some of the bigger guys. Kerman Limitov's a really big Russian defenseman up at 6'4". He's a really solid guy who put up some really good numbers in the MHL with 23 points this past season, despite being a really good shutdown guy as well. Vaclav Nestrasil, he's a good player as well, who's got some good offensive upside while also being 6'6". So these are the kinds of guys, you look at these bigger guys down the board here that I think are going to really rise on draft day, on day 2 of the draft, because of their size and the fact that there's not a lot separating the players in this range. So teams are going to opt to go for the guys that have the high-end upside with their physical big statures. Conrad Fonder is another good offensive player who's got good size. Carter Amigo is one of the biggest players in the draft, another 6'6" guy who is a really good defensively. He doesn't have the offensive bag really at all, but he's a really good shutdown physical defenseman who, another guy with a high floor of like a shutdown third pair guy. Riker Lee, another top end offensive bag kind of guy who's got good skill there. Moving down, Alexander Zarovsky has had a pretty good Russian season over in Russia. He's been pretty good for all the teams he's played for in the MHL. He had 50 points in 45 games this year, so he's got a really good offensive bag to him. And he's 6'1" as well, so he hits the thresholds you're hoping for those skill guys. Shane Van Sagi has been a really big riser lately. I'm not buying fully into the rise he's had. He doesn't, and it's a little interesting to me because he doesn't possess the typical traits that end up being big risers. The typical big late risers are guys who go on tears at the end of the season offensively and put up ridiculous numbers in ridiculous stretches, or really big guys who are physical and teams like, oh, I like the physical traits in this guy. He's not really either. He's got good average size and didn't put up he didn't have a crazy season at MSU, but he's a good skilled guy, so there's some potential there, but he's rising a lot. I wouldn't be surprised to see him at the back end of the first round. Pyotr Andrianov is, to me, another unquestionably probably the second or the third best goalie in this draft class. He had an absolutely insane season in the MHL this past year. 37 games, a .942 save percentage with a 1.75 goals against average. Only lost 6 games in regulation this past season as well, with 23 wins, 6 losses, and 6 overtime losses. So he's an absolute stud, and he has good size as well at 6'2". So he's prototypical goaltender size for NHL goalies. Daniil Prokhorov is another solid Russian forward. There's a lot of decent Russians in the second round of this draft. A lot of big Russians, another 6'6" guys, so could rise up a lot as well due to that size. Mason West is a super interesting prospect. He's a 3-star quarterback coming out of high school who is choosing to play hockey. He's big at 6'6". A lot of big guys in this range, but he's a big physical guy with a lot of athleticism to tap into on the ice because of the way he played quarterback. So it's really an interesting choice as well to choose to play hockey, but I think he's probably a better hockey prospect than he is a football prospect, but there's a lot more money to be made in the NFL game, but he's choosing hockey, and he's got all the physical tools that NHL teams are going to like, and a really good season this year. He played most of the year at high school because, he was playing quarterback as well for his high school team. He had 49 points in 31 games, and then he went over to the USHL at the end of the season, played 10 games, had 9 points. So, there's a lot to like with a guy like Mason West, who can play anywhere on the ice as well as a forward. Ben Kavan, another solid USHL player. Peyton Kettles is a solid defenseman who could be a good defensive defenseman. Philip Ekberg is a guy I liked a lot heading into the year, had a bit of an underwhelming season in Ottawa, It wasn't like bad by any means. He was 45 points in 53 games. That's a pretty good stretch. But he went on an absolute tear at the U18s with 18 points in 7 games, one of the best players of the tournament. So I got back on the the Ekberg train. I was never off the Ekberg train, but I had him a lot lower in my rankings. And after seeing him put up those offensive numbers and seeing how he played in that tournament, I rose him back up a little bit there. But I like his game. I like his upside for sure. Next is two goalies, Alexei Medvedev and Semyon Frolov, both solid goalies. Medvedev had a good season in London, and Frolov was pretty good at the MHL level for Spartak Moskva. Simon Hoaxi Wang, Simon Wang, he's an interesting prospect. I think he could go really high or he could slip pretty far. He's got a lot of interesting traits. 6'6", another trend there. But he's really smooth skating. He's got a really good stride on him for a player of that size, but he played the most of the year in the OJHL here in Ontario and had 22 points in 38 games, came over to the OHL mid-season, only put up 2 points in 32 games. He's not exactly a shut-down defenseman, so you'd like to see a little bit more offensive punch from him, but we'll see what he can do. He's going over to Boston University next year to play for for BU. A lot of the guys in this range are. He's going there along with some other guys where they... up the board here, yeah, Conrad Frondruk and Carter Amico are both going to BU. Charlie Trethway is going to BU. So a lot of BUs are getting a lot of additions out of this class here, along with Jack Murtaugh. So a lot of players going to BU out of this draft class. But he's going to go there. We'll see if he can, if he can develop a little bit better out there this next season. But there's definitely high upside on him. I don't know if he'll be able to fully reach that. Theo Stockselius and Arvid Drop are two of the top Swedish players for Djurgården's J20 squad. They both had really, really good offensive seasons over the past year. Drott had 36 points in 40 games, and Stockselius had even more than that. He was well over a point per game this past year, sitting at a little bit over a point per game. So that rounds out the top 64. So there's a lot of decent guys here. I think, you're not really crazy to me if you have guys at different ranges. If you have these guys flipped around in different areas, if you have them a lot higher, there's also plenty of guys just outside the top 64 you could easily rank in the top 64. This draft class after the top 15 to 20 gets super tight in terms of the skill sets and the players. They're all it feels like they're all either small, high-end skill guys, middle-sized, physical power forward, or not power forward, but like grinded out kind of players who don't have the size to do it, but play a hard style, or they're big players who have a lot of upside. And so it's really just gonna be what the NHL teams at the draft want at those spots. I think we're gonna see a lot of risers, a lot of fallers in this range. It's gonna be a wild end of the first round, and the second round is gonna be super unpredictable. But yeah, that'll do it for this rankings. Let me know if there's anyone I left off this list, any guy you think should have belonged here, anyone you think should be higher or lower on this list. I'll have two, hopefully, if I can get them done, 2 mock drafts coming out. I'm gonna have one coming out later this week, and I'm gonna try and do one day before the draft to really try and get on the nose predictions for the first round of the NHL draft. But that's what I've got coming up. Thanks for watching this one. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.